I think it's going to be an interesting game. Miami's a 4 to 5 point favorite. Really, Virginia's relied on one thing. 6. They're going to start swaying me to, if they can bump that up a point, I might be really swayed. But basically, they're playing a very one-dimensional Virginia team but they're basically playing a passing attack is what they're playing. They're playing a poor man's version of what Florida was last year. Of course, Florida was able to parlay that into a top 10 team in the country because they were so good. But Virginia can really sling it around the field. But defense, awful. Running game, non-existent. Basically, the quarterback does everything. He's basically the leading rusher practically, and he's throwing for the likes of 360 yards and a half against North Carolina, 59 pass attempts the last outing against Wake Forest. So it's pretty much Brennan Armstrong and a couple capable receivers, Billy Kemp, I'm going to screw some names up. Hicks is the other player. Jelani Woods is their big tight end, a 6'7". They're playmakers. And basically, Miami's playing a passing attack on Thursday night, and that's what they need to at least slow down to win this game.
Yeah, Brendan Armstrong has thrown for 400 yards in the last 3 games that they've played. He's the first quarterback to throw for 400 yards in multiple consecutive losses in a while. I saw the stat come down the timeline this weekend when that happened. But yeah, he's their shifty left-handed quarterback who, he can run a little bit. So, if you play just, cover 0 or just, cover 1 man across the board and you're going to have safeties at 20 yards and everybody underneath is going to turn their backs. If he's able to step away from some pressure, then he's going to get loose. So, and that's to the point of Mark saying, he's pretty much the leading rusher, and that's how that's going to happen. You have a couple maybe design plays or RPO kind of plays where it's like I could run or I could throw and he's going to get some yardage, but scrambling, he's definitely not a statue in that kind of a way, but he has been very successful throwing the ball. The 6'7" tight end is good. He got banged up last week. He's 6'7", and you don't want to give targeting, so somebody went, through his legs. Unfortunately, that sometimes going to be through your knees. That's just what it's going to be. So, we'll see if he's at 100%. I know that I saw, I think one or two of their defensive linemen at Virginia got injured last weekend. One of them did not return to the game. One of them did. So I'm not sure. And they were already missing a guy, I think, the defensive end for them for the year. So that's something to look forward to, or look out for, I should say. But regardless of that, the main idea here is Virginia throwing the ball vertically down the field has been a problem for opposing defenses. So you need to find out a way to do that or to slow that down a little bit. Conversely, their offense or their defense has been terrible, except for a couple drives where Wake Forest was really on Operation Shutdown at the end of their game. So that was punt at the end of the game when they're just trying to drain clock. But on drives where the other team is trying actively maybe to score, but not, just run out the clock, the last 16 drives ahead of those 3 for Virginia's defense, and this is a tweet from David Hale, and I'm going to read it directly. It went like this for 16 drives before Wake Forest decided to go Operation Shutdown. Touchdown, 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 field goal, interception for Virginia, field goal, touchdown, 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 field goal, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. So you get one stop in 16 drives where the opposing team did not score until Wake Forest decided to go to the slowdown offense, eat up clock, punt the ball, because they're not going to do anything because Wake Forest's defense, and I tweeted, I said, it's a shame that I wish our defense was that kind of physical because they were getting after Brendan Armstrong with the 3-man rush and they were getting home, But that also showcases, look, for what ails Miami, i.e. scoring points against an FBS level team, this is a team who stopped any opponent, and 16 drives is going to go 2.5 games. You know what I mean? Like, that's not just, because in a given game, you're going to get between 7 and 10 or like 8 and 11 drives of possessions on offense. So you're going 2 games probably, because that went into the Wake Forest game, 2.5 games where the offense had one singular drive that did not yield points. Bro, for Miami, you got to put points on the board now. You have to take advantage of that. So there are things that Virginia will do that will be challenging. There are opportunities to be had for sure for Miami on the other side of things. And I'm really looking forward to that. But, this has always been a game that will zig where all prognosticators think it's going to zag. If you don't recall, Al Golden single-handedly kept Mike London employed for multiple years by losing to some of the worst Virginia teams that we've seen. Okay? If you look back at the last few years, they've been, 16-14, 19-17, 19-16 Miami wins over the last 2 years. So total scores under 35, and the over-under is 62 or 62 and a half right now. Like, it's been, in the last couple of years, you've been lucky to get halfway to what the over-under is set at. So, it's going to be a challenge. And we'll see if Miami can rise to the occasion. But, if you're really trying to make a step forward and contend for the ACC Coastal, and, the coach has been saying, Manny Diaz, that's our coach's name. If he's been saying, hey, all the goals that we have in front that we had before the year are still in front of us, which I think is a little bit disingenuous because you should have been pushing for 11 wins this year anyway, but whatever. But if you're pushing for a 10-win season, that is still potentially possible if you run the table the rest of this season in the regular season. If you're looking for an ACC Coastal Division championship, that is potentially possible because Miami's not played a division game or a conference game. But if you're going to address or approach those goals, you got to win tomorrow night. And that win tomorrow night would pretty much put Virginia out of contention because they're already 0-2 in the league. If you start 0-3 in conference, you're probably not going to factor into anybody's race. Now, if they get this one and they're 1-2, now you're trying to go towards that everybody in the Coastal being 4-4, and you flip a coin and you go to the 37th tiebreaker. But, Virginia does do some things very well, but Virginia also does some things very poorly. And it is my express hope that Miami takes advantage of that situation and comes out with a victory. And again, whether that can be by a lot or a little, as long as you win. And because I've seen people tweeting me about it, take this show right here as your, I'm not going to say the name of that brand, but as your high energy moment, because that will not be me on the field doing any other promotional kind of things like I did a couple of years ago. So enjoy it now.
This division is shaping up, and I state this with very few games being played, but it's more about just the way the teams are playing outside of conference. But there have been some very meaningful integral games to the division race, i.e. Georgia Tech beating North Carolina last week by 3 scores, where this is broken down from where it looked like a North Carolina-Miami showdown for the division championship to who knows what kind of free-for-all this could be. It could be a 3-way tie at 5-3 for first place in the division if one of those 2 more talented teams, i.e. Miami and North Carolina, don't get their acts together and pull away from the pack. But the way it's being played right now, both divisions look like they could just be complete free-for-alls.
Yeah.
Here's the scoring summary I came up with. It's very similar to what you just did. I went through the Wake Forest game until they took their foot off the gas. The North Carolina game, North Carolina had 11 drives, excluding, again, kneel down at the end of the game, kneel down at the end of the half. 11 drives, 8 touchdowns, 2 field goals, and a pick.
8 touchdowns, 2 field goals, and a pick.
Wake
in
Forest
11 drives of offense.
Wake Forest, the first 7 drives of the game before it was, they had a 20-point lead, 4 touchdowns, 3 field goals.
Again, points every single time on the field.
So in 18 drives, 17 scores, 12 touchdowns, 5 field goals in 18 drives. Wow, that's bad.
I mean, what else do you want me to say? Like, it's demonstrated. You can go look up the film. Like, that's pretty atrocious. That's incredibly porous for a defense. I mean, I would call them Swiss cheese, but that's disrespectful to that delectable, culinary item. So look, points are there to be had, and we've seen it from other teams. You got to go score.
I thought Bronco Mendenhall was a defensive guy. I thought that was his calling card.
So too as well, sometimes the thing that you do best is the thing that you ignore. And for whatever reason, maybe it's scheme, maybe it's injuries. Maybe this is just a gap year for their cycle of recruiting and development or whatever it is. But yeah, sometimes these things happen.
I heard a partial explanation for Brendan Armstrong because I watched the first half of the Wake Forest Virginia game until it ceased to be a game. And he was throwing lasers all over the place. And I tweeted at one point, I said, this is the best quarterback in college football that nobody's talking about. And I just didn't base it on that. I'd seen him before, and I saw part of the North Carolina game as well. Mm-hmm. And they explained during last week's game that we didn't see this Brendan Armstrong necessarily last year because of all the COVID protocol and the shortening of the season and no off season, that basically this was his off season to develop into being the player that he is. And this is why he's just taken off, is that he's finally gotten the coaching and the tutelage and the reps to become this kind of player. So basically, I find this kind of fascinating that their leading rusher from the running back position is 91 yards, not in a game, 91. Wayne Talapapa, if you watch ACC football, you've seen that name. He's been like in the program for like 5 years.
And he's not playing anymore because he did a knee, so he's done for the season.
Oh, okay.
So the next actual leading rushing running back is somebody else, because they were talking in the Wake Forest game later when they had to filibuster a little bit about Talapapa and why he's on the sideline and everything, because he's injured and no longer a part of the attack.
So they weren't even getting rushing yards from the running back position. They were getting all of 20 yards per game from the running back position. So they are really just riding on his arm, and that's it.
But then we've seen things like this before. I mean, maybe not to this extreme, but I mean, we've all seen a Mike Leach coached offense, swing passes and slip screens and, short routes and meshes and, different kind of things that are ostensibly extensions of the run game. Excuse me for that. But you can do things throwing the ball that approximate what you can get from running the ball. And, hey, because if you can't run it, then you need to throw it. And that's the thing that we saw with Miami versus Michigan State, for an example, if you're wondering about that, for, using our program as an example. But, like I said, look at a Mike Leach coach team. Things have happened before. So, that's really what they're looking at. And, it helps them to have the ball in Brendan Armstrong's hand every single play. So, yeah.
Had a long day, started at 4 a.m. I'm nervous about the Virginia game. Cam, please soothe my nerves with your velvety smooth voice and tell me why Miami will win.
Miami will win because they will find a way to stop Virginia's offense. There might be yards to be had, but they will find a way to bow up in the defensive red zone. Also taking advantage of a very, very not good Virginia defense. One that, again, as we've detailed, gave up 17 scores and 18 drives. Now, that was between touchdowns and field goals, and Miami's going to find a way to increase their red zone offense so that they get into the end zone. Also by playing more of the young players who are talented and hungry. And with all due respect, have not had the dog in them trained out by the Miami program, because we've seen some of that. Guys who come in with high acclaim and then they just play average. And whether that's, training or just their innate ability, whatever it is, we don't like it. But we have young guys who are incredibly talented. They're going to play some major snaps this weekend, and everything. We'll be as healthy as we can going into that game and take advantage of those things. And also, we're going to make a play on special teams that's going to flip something. Hopefully, it'll be a return. Maybe it'll be a big hit on coverage. Maybe it'll be a couple field goals from the next kicker in the Borgales kicking dynasty. Shout out to Andy's mustache on Twitter. So those are the reasons, the things that are going to happen. It might be a closer game than, we might want, because, again, these teams play close games for many, many years. This is going back more than a decade, 15 years. And not all close games are low-scoring games between Miami and Virginia. But even in the Mike London era, when we kept that man employed for many, many years, single-handedly, those games were close, although they were shootouts. So it might be a little closer, but, I think that Miami is going to have some stick-to-itiveness. I think that some of the older voices in the room, older players in the room, are going to take a backseat to some of the younger players who are maybe a little bit more full of energy and vivacity, and they will lead vocally towards Miami having a win on Thursday night. And I hope that works for you.
I got to think, not that you asked for my opinion, Falcon or X, nor my velvety smooth voice, because I don't own one of those, that considering the statistics we just read off, that's a complete indictment against this Virginia defense. That really North Carolina, of course, has a future NFL quarterback, but besides that, their offensive personnel very, very similar in talent level, skill level to Miami. Wake Forest, not in the league of Miami from his skill and talent level. Very good offense, though, and a very good quarterback in Sam Hartman. If those two offenses could put down the kind of production that they just did, where North Carolina scored 59 points and Wake Forest put up 37 and took off the gas for the last 5 or 6 drives, so they had 37 through 3 quarters, that Miami should, it's going to be an indictment against the Miami offense if they can't put up in the high 30s at least.
Yeah.
And then Virginia, yes, as Cam just outlined, tremendous quarterback, 3 really good receivers / tight end. They'll put up some yardage and points, but if this game isn't in the 38-21, 38-24 range, that's probably where it should be. When you know a team, this is all they can do, it makes your scheming on defense much easier.